You're listening to Systemic Error Podcast. The failure was designed.
Nightmare scenario unlocked by Trump as hero nurse fears losing her toddler, based on an article by Alexandria Jacobson, investigative reporter. The state used her, then put her on a timer. Humanitarianism with an expiration date. The source centers on Harlaine, a Haitian nurse in Florida who worked COVID critical care across the country and now faces the loss of her work authorization after the Supreme Court allowed the Trump administration to terminate TPS for Haitian and Syrian immigrants. That is the core fact pattern. A worker who kept other people alive is now being told her own life in the United States is conditional, revocable, and politically expendable. The power is not ambiguous. This is not a tragedy of uncertainty. The power sits with the Supreme Court, the Department of Homeland Security, and the executive branch that chose termination over continuity. TPS holders did not create the crisis in Haiti, the earthquake, or the instability that made return unsafe. They were placed under a federal protection regime and then subjected to a federal decision to strip it away. That is not drift. That is an institution deciding which lives remain usable and which become removable. The real violence is administrative. The article makes clear what the policy actually does. It rips away work authorization, insurance access, and the ability to keep families intact. That is the mechanism of harm. The government does not need spectacle when paperwork can do the job. A 9-day extension, a looming deadline, and a judicial green light are enough to produce panic, job loss, and the slow threat of family separation. Bureaucracy is being used as a weapon with a clean signature. Just apply is a lie. The story's most revealing friction is the easy language of permanent status versus the ugly reality of immigration law. Telling TPS holders to return home or apply for permanent status pretends there is a neutral path waiting for them. The source explains why that is false. Permanent residence requires an underlying legal basis most people do not have. So the state first tolerates decades of labor, family life, mortgages, children, and community ties, then acts shocked that those lives cannot be simply rewound on command. That is not confusion. It is misdirection serving exclusion, the pattern behind the panic. TPS has become a familiar American scam. Offer temporary protection, extract stable labor for years, then rediscover the word temporary when politics shifts rightward. The beneficiaries are not the families now terrified about deportation. The beneficiaries are institutions that got the labor, the care work, the taxes, and the social stability while keeping the threat of removal and reserve. Harlaine's story is not an exception. It is the logic of a state that treats immigrant belonging as useful right up until it becomes politically inconvenient. What this story actually shows. The larger political pattern is simple. Democratic institutions cannot be measured by their slogans, only by whom they protect when pressure rises. Here, the protection was revoked. The court ratified it, and the burden was dumped on workers, parents, and children who had already done everything the government claimed to require. The article's real subject is not uncertainty. It is organized abandonment dressed up as law. You've been listening to Systemic Error. Thanks to Raw Story for today's article, with the automated voice of Joe. Thanks for listening.